Welcome once again to the Rock online tutorials, and of course, learning brought to be easy to you. That is, you can easily get your learning good English or use of English at your doorstep, which is brought by the Rock Tutors. That is Olufemi Akpata. And here I am today again to take you use of English, Jato Abdurrahman. So today we are going to take through some other aspects of English, which includes mostly the how to answer comprehension passages, the registers, and of course some other aspects of lexemes and structures. And we have some questions without that have been succinctly picked that should be answered, from the past questions. So we look at how those passages, because wittingly you can see that some of the comprehension passages, as much as they are written and you are given the multiple choices to pick from some certain options that have been kept there, then you will see that most of the options, the provided options, are also contained in the passage. These are always made it as well very difficult, because when you see option A, B, C, D, you also see them across the passages as well. So that is why we are going to firstly take through how you can easily and very fastly pick some of the answers in the comprehension passages. So from where we move to the registers, and of course also the lexical and structural aspect of some of the questions. So first, before we move into the questions, yes, ordinarily we have some very good and bad reading habits, because we have some systems of reading. Of course, we have scanning, skimming, intensive and extensive reading methods. But when it comes to having to pick answers, that is, reading a passage to pick some answers in the multiple choice form, you couldn't have said you want to scan or skim the passages. Of course, you cannot really understand what the passage is talking about. And now, the major cause is having to differentiate between when you have a major point being mentioned in a passage and some minor or some sort of illustrations. For instance, I could have actually explained some particular aspect in general terms. Then, in the course of my write-up, I could have brought some kind of, maybe should I say expressions by the way, or some kind of examples given. And at the end of the day, having to look at the questions or the options provided, you see that even most of the examples given could be scripted again as part of the questions. That is, the options from where you should pick. But to be very faster and for you to comprehend, that is why we call it comprehension. So, ability to actually read those passages and ability to understand what has been discussed, that is the subject matter of the passage. Looking at this, then definitely you have to read per having to really understand the power of all the punctuation marks, the power of paragraphing, that is, each paragraph must contain a topic sentence. Every paragraph you see, you should always remember that there is a topic sentence, that is, certain thing very important is discussed in a particular paragraph. Then as well, there are instances you have some words, maybe you might have not come across them before, maybe they look somewhat strange, but you really do not have to bother yourself about this, because to every word you don't understand, the accompanying words, that is the way they are being used connotatively, could give you an inkling as to understanding some part of, would I say, buried kind of meanings to some words you think you don't really know. So as used, so that brings about connotation. Then also, you must understand that each of these passages being brought has some kind of deductions you should see. So that is why your questions are being brought in different areas. We have the contextual questions. Of course, these kind of questions come to test your ability to really know if some particular aspects have been mentioned or not in the passages. Then we have questions on dictions. Dictional questions come to test your knowledge about the understanding on the use of words in the passages. So there are some words, there are two major meanings to each word. So you have the contextual, which is connotative meaning, that is meaning according to how it has been used in the passage. Then also we have the denotative, which is also called the dictionary meaning. Of course, when you have a word that, okay, for instance, down. Down may be something that is not up. So, but, and the word down could be used maybe when someone falls sick, or that the person is not upright for that time then the person could say he was down for then. So that wouldn't mean the person is not up. So, and that is why we must quite understand most of the aspects, that is the overriding principle brings to the fact that the way those words have been contained in the passage contextually, so will be very, very very important to your choice of choosing which one can replace. And that is why you see that the question will say which one best describes, or which one can replace a certain word as used in the passage. The third part of question that could come are questions on deductions. That is, to every kind of write-up, we have inductive reasoning and we have deductive reasoning. That is, most of these kind of questions are authorial in nature. According to the author, what do you think a certain kind of expression connotes? So that is, according to the passage, the view of the writer is of what? And you are going to be given some options, of course, where you can pick that, okay, is it that kind of despondency or aspiration or whatsoever it is. So that is why you have to look inwardly into the writer's kind of concept before you are picking some of those answers. Then the fourth one comes with the issue of yes, no, or true, false, not given. There are some aspects that will be mentioned in the passage. Now you'll be asked to pick which of these is true according to the passage, or of course as well they can come with which of these is not true according to the passage. So that means all other options are true, that is, they are is either partially or absolutely mentioned in the passage, then only one will not be mentioned. So that is why you look at some of the questions and very well look at the options given before you start picking your answers. And you know how important it looks picking the right answers in the UTME especially, because it carries the most mark in all aspects of your questions. So you look at, let us look at this comprehension passage. You say, these two factors, the altitude and the weather, tend separately and together to defeat the climber. The height weakens, slows him down. It forces him to spend days and nights in the course of assault on the summit. The weather, besides adding to the demands of his energy and moral fortitude, conspires to deny him the time he needs to complete his mission. Whereas in lower mountains and on easy ground, the weather may be no more than a handicap. In the high Himalayas, it is decisive, regardless of terrain. Now you could see, having it been read, all punctuation marks are well respected. So that will give you a very good understanding of the passage. So ordinarily, had you read it in the course of maybe using some sort of formula like an unending redeemable kind of aspect, then definitely you can not understand what the passage is actually saying. So we now move to the questions and see how those questions are being brought, and we have to pick from there off. Okay, now it continues. The deductions to be drawn from these two factors was clear enough. We must either so fortify ourselves that we continue without detriment to live and to have our being above the limit of natural acclimatization, Looking at this, there are some words or group of words that will be italicized or that will be underscored. Most of these aspects, you should prepare your mind that some questions are actually coming out from here. So from that will not give you some sort of cold water. So your mind would have been prepared towards such. So, or better still, we must solve the problem of speed. It was desirable, in fact, that we should meet both these requirements and thus give to those chosen to attempt the summit and to their supporting teams some measure of insurance against the vagaries of weather for safety in mountain climbing, inasmuch a matter of sweetness, of sureness of foot. So that says the passage. So we now look at the different questions that will be rolled all through. The first paragraph, the second paragraph as well, has really given us, they have given us some kind of, like a sort of inkling as what the passage really is talking about. And that brings about why we call it comprehension passages. That is, you must be able to, or you must understand what the passage is really talking about first, before you can say, you can really kind of attempt to answer the questions. Either or both could be achieved only by the administration of oxygen in sufficient quantities to make up for the deficiency in the air and for the duration of the upward journey above the limit of successful acclimatization. So, now, question 1. So the author believes that to overcome the problems of altitude and weather, the climber needs mainly, now looking at what I had explained earlier, said A, courage and speed. B, energy and moral fortitude. C, sufficient quantities of oxygen. D, swiftness and sureness of foot. E, quick acclimatization. Of course, you see that all the options mentioned here are contained in the passage. But if we look at what the passage actually is talking about, so one will say that there are some of these options, that are just expressions by the way. They are not actually what the question is talking about. Because of course there was a time it talked about courage. Okay, now looking at here, it says either or both could be achieved only. Then we have just a question of concept here. We have two issues discussed. Then we now have, they say either or both. Is that one of it? Or the two could be achieved only, this brings to four, by the administration of oxygen in sufficient quantities. So that answers the question of it is either, it is even if it is one or the two above. That is the issue of courage and speed mentioned, which are perhaps examples. The moral fortitude are also examples of the courage that may be gotten. Then the only thing which answers the whole questions now come with sufficient quantities of oxygen, which brings about the overall that can answer the question. So that brings option C to be an answer there. Now, looking at the way conspires was used in the passage, these two factors, the altitude and weather, tend to separately and together to defeat climber. The height weakens, slows him down. It forces him to spend days and nights in the course of his assault on the summit. The weather, besides adding to the demands of his energy and moral fortitude, conspires, this is where it has been used now, conspires to deny him the time he needs to complete his mission. So conspires as used now, because I wouldn't have said, immediately we saw the question that, okay, conspire. Pick another word to replace conspires in the passage. And you just go to the passage and pick any of those options. You may be wrong, because the options will provide both connotative, which is contextual meaning, and of course as well, denotative meaning, which is meaning according to the dictionary. Though, coincidentally, some may become answers. But conspires as used now, That is bringing together. Okay, coming together to actually act on a force. So now let's look at the options given. Conspires. We now have runes, make secret plans, take wicked action, combines, aggravates. I believe now, ordinarily, you would know when they say coming together. So that brings about the issue of combination. So for here, conspires as used means combines. That is, they are brought together to actually answer the question now. Go to the next question. Regardless of terrain. Regardless of terrain. Regardless, as a word itself, means not minding. So that is a question of concession. It's concessional. So when it comes to concession, then definitely anything that's concessional should either come with in spite of or despite. In fact, that alone can easily give you an inkling as to answering the question. Because regardless, it means it is concessional. So regardless of the terrain, it is not minding. So that brings option B, despite the nature of the ground. That is, we are not minded by the nature of the ground, then definitely, which is the terrain there. So even some of those words at times that could seem somewhat difficult, the introducers can easily give you some sort of a leeway to getting the right answers. Yes, to live and have our being above the limit of natural acclimatization, which had been used in the last paragraph there. It said to be protected from effects of the weather, to expect no protection from the bad weather, to survive under unnatural weather conditions, limit our nature desires to get acclimatized to the weather, then none of the above. So, looking at the way it has been written with what we had read, so option C is saying, to live and have our being above the limit of natural acclimatization. So definitely, that is to survive under unnatural weather conditions. That is, we are not kind of imbued to the fact that until we have some sort of overprotection against some kind of natural occurrences. So that is to survive under unnatural, even when it is beyond natural, supernatural weather conditions. So that makes option C an answer. Then number 5. Which one of the following was not a reason for using oxygen? Like I did explain then, I talked about the issue of maybe true, false, not given, or one of these is mentioned in the passage, one of these was not mentioned in the passage, and so on and so forth. But looking at this now, I say, I dare not lift the veil that protects our tribal marriage, customs, and ceremonies from the eyes of outsiders. There's already too little in this world that is sacred. And what Fatmata and I were required to go through during the next week must remain so. I was deeply in debt by the time everything was over, but I was absolutely satisfied with my parents' choice. So Fatmata was as black as satin and also soft. But okay, now looking at even the passage, as black as satin and also soft. Then, she had the teeth and smile of a goddess. The Dopo tutors had done their job well. She was completely efficient lover and mother. I brought her home with swelling pride and began at once to save all I could spare, that is all I could spare, towards the cost of acquiring my second wife. My anti-Western revolt was gaining momentum. So from there, this kind of passage is at least trying to explain that maybe somebody or some man having to bring home a new wife and who happens to be a black woman, which he so much adores. And this is also telling us that this is not the first woman he's going to have. So, because with the closing remark, he's talking about a sort of anti-Western culture. So now, the question now continues. Say the evidence would seem to indicate that A, the author adores his wife, he disapproves her ways, he thinks she is extravagant, the author regrets the cause of death, she had not been properly brought up. Of course, all other options are not true, with the exception of option A, because there are a lot of adoration having to say she is black as satin and also as soft, that which she emblemizes some sort of a very beautiful African woman. That is the emblem he had actually given to the new wife. So that is adoration. But talking about disapproval or extravagance there, though he spent a lot, but that didn't include the fact that he was actually very disapproving in his expenses. So the next question, when the author said my anti-Western revolt was gaining momentum, he was referring to the fact that my anti-Western revolt, like I explained then, it is more of Western to be akin to just one wife. Okay, so say, oh, he did not like polygamy? No, because he was even against it. That is the word anti from even the study of the word itself. He hated Europeans? No. He did not want to marry another wife. Oh, of course, why would he have brought another woman whom he so much adores? He admired everything about his wife. He revolted against European values. That is anti-Western revolt. So it means he had actually gone against the issue of maybe the whites, which are referred here to the Western people, that maybe they are only akin to having to get one wife. So, and he, like what he said there was that he was actually beaming with a lot of pride as to bringing home Fatimata, which he described as very beautiful. So, question 8. It would appear that the marriage had turned him into a dash, a good worker, a faithful husband, an incurable debtor, a tragic figure, a proud husband. In all, the overall decision that could be seen is that he was actually very proud of taking a new wife. And of course, he was happy as well to have gotten that, since he actually described Fatimata as a good wife and a mother as well. So that makes him a proud husband. So, which one of the following is not true about the passage? Like the last kind of conceptual questions I did explain then, there are instances where you'll be asked which one is true, which one is not true, or which one is not mentioned in the passage. The lady was beautiful, of course. Yes, that was well said. The marriage cost a lot of money, yeah. In fact, it got to a point, he said it was indebted. The marriage was according to native law and custom. That brings about the veil, because on bringing Fatimata, he had to open the veil, and like he said, according to the custom of his people. Fatimata never had an issue. I don't think we were ever told that, if she had an issue or not. Then the author wanted another wife. Had he not wanted another wife, he wouldn't have taken Fatimata. And of course, after taking Fatimata, he was still saying he was proud to be a polygamist. So Fatimata never had an issue. We were never told such. That makes option D an answer. The number 10, swelling, just like in the first comprehension passage we read then. We have to look at the connotative meaning. Swelling, say he was swelling, he has a swelling pride. Jovial, great, remarkable, happy, growing. Because it was still in the habit, was like having to take Fatimata as another wife. He was still having it in mind again to still have another wife, because he seems to take pride in polygamy. So that makes it growing here. So I hope you do understand that of most of comprehension passages and how we were able to pick some of the options. Now we'll go to the cloze passage, which we, of course, we also know as register. When it comes to this aspect, we have what we call feed language, that is collocations. There are some words that are actually only apt to particular kind of expressions we do must make. To whom a patient is as a doctor, the same kind of person will be a client to a lawyer. The same kind of person will be a customer to a business person. And the same kind of person will still be a passenger to a driver. So that is why at times, most of the options you'll be given, you will just see that they are synonymous in nature. But of these options given, which one best fits what you are talking about? It isn't as if you will not be correct, but you are not very correct. It's, for instance, you say, oh, you give me a respect. Meanwhile, oh, respect is not something that can be given, whereas you are called respect. So these are the kind of words that usually come in under register. That is, you'll be given some sort of passages, while some words will be taken out of the passages to be replaced. Then you have options to pick from. Now, Ofala is a festival that is celebrated in virtually every Igbo community in Nigeria. It is the king's own festival, during which he shows himself to the people, many of whom have probably not dashed eyes on him for a long time. We have questions on often misplaced words now. We have lied, lay, lain, laid. Of course, these kind of words most times often put us off the chest. Because now we have lie, which is L-I-A, which has passed as lied, which is to say the untrue, which is option A. Then we have lay, which is past tense of lie too. Lie, that is to be in a state of repose. Maybe for instance, oh, go and lie there. Lie down. So parts of it will be lay. The perfect of it will be laying. Have you ever lain on that foam? So then we have lain, which is of course the perfect of lay. Then laid as well, because we have lay as a present tense. One is done by oviparous animals, like apes, reptiles, Pisces. They lay eggs before they give birth to young ones. So lay, which is the present, and laid, the past. And laid as well, the perfect tense. So, and we have lay too as well, which is to put something down. For instance, I can say, oh, lay bare your heart before God. Lay bare your heart before God. So the past is also laid, and which is also, we are talking about eyes now. So which is, oh, go and lay your eyes on him. But we are talking about the past of lay now. So which makes it laid. So that is, many of whom have probably not laid eyes on him for a long time. So we are talking about the past form of lay, of having to put something down, or to actually, like in form of eye, having to see something. Oh, I've not laid my eyes on him, but oh, I think I have to lay my eyes on him today, which is in the present form. So then the morning of the Ofala sees large crowds that we have, okay, we're gather to be gathering, gathers in the palace arena. One thing is, in this kind of questions, you have to complete the sentence. You don't just pick the option, because if you pick an option, the next accompanying sort of expressions may later give the meanings of what should be sought in the passage. So that is why you must complete the sentence. So the morning of the Ofala says large crowds gather, because we have a kind of bare infinitive here. After bare infinitive in form of see, watch, hear, then the next verb should be a plural present verb. So the morning of the Ofala sees large crowds gather in the palace arena. Suddenly, cannon dash repeatedly. What does cannon do? When it comes to cannon, you shoot cannons. Okay, so that is why cannons could be shot. The shooting of the cannon. So it's a sort of explosive, but it is being shot. So of which the sound could boom, but in this case, it is being shot. So suddenly cannon shots. So this should be shots repeatedly. So you shoot a cannon, but it is a cannon shot, not the booming. So then rich dash vibration, gyration, explosion, percussion from the royal musicians fills the air. Rich percussion, that is an arrangement of different musicals, which is mostly done when it comes to cultural kind of musical displays. So percussion from the royal musicians fills the air. The Igwe emerges like the rising sun, dash in white budded gold and black robes. How did he appear? That should be resplendent, that is showy, a kind of showy and shining. So now the Igwe then begins the dash dance with his wife. Of course, we have traditional, social, royal, cultural. We have a cultural dance that is akin to the culture, not to the tradition, with his wife, followed by his entourage. He dances around the arena to the cheers, That is the preposition that should be used, to the cheers and praises of the crowd. So, because you couldn't have wit or art to complete such kind of word there. So you dance or you kind of arise to the cheers of others. That is, they were cheering you as you do such. So, finally, the Igwe takes his seat and his people begin to dash. Okay, Igwe, pay their respects, pray him with gifts, observe his steps, pay their tolls. No, they are paying their respects here. So you pay the respect to the king, and now says, you will live long on the throne. You live on the throne. That is a preposition, that is a test on preposition there. So they declare, bowing respectfully before him. The Igwe dash their homage by touching their back. Answers, response, acknowledges, replies. You see that most of these options now look synonymous. Meanwhile, when it comes to having to give a kind of recourse to the homage, so you acknowledge a homage. So he acknowledges their homage by touching their back. So this is how most of those answers could be picked. So by the time you now pick those options, you reread the passage, and looking at, then it forms a whole passage. So that is from where you can actually test if you have gotten a very good one or the other way around at that. So we now look at some other aspects, which is the structural aspect of the work. So we